Hi, everyone. My name is Ray Allman. I'm the associate principal at Libertyville High School. And I wanted to take just a few moments and run through our 2020 substitute training, some basic health and safety and classroom procedures, which are going to be new this year because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, by way of getting started, some of this information, by the way, is specific just to Libertyville High School, but it is applicable to both Libertyville and Vernon Hills, wherever you're subbing in District 128. So some things you'll notice for our building. First and foremost, each building has dedicated entrances about where you can come in. So at Libertyville, that's our main entrance or the studio theater. At that entrance, when you come in, you're going to get temperature checked. The temperature screening devices we've purchased look at your eyes and a artery in your eyes to get your temperature, your body temperature. And if we have any individuals, students or staff, who has a body temperature of 100.4 degrees or greater, they will be excluded from coming into the high schools. Now, if you ring up hot, we'll have people wait a couple minutes and walk by again just to make sure we don't get any false positives. But if someone is hot, we would ask that you not come in the building and instead, in this case, call either Audrey or Griselle at Libertyville or Vernon Hills and tell them what's going on and that you won't be able to sub for the day. The other thing that we ask, again, all of our students or staff, is to go through a symptom tracker, which talks about many different symptoms potentially related to COVID-19. And our basic rule of thumb is if you have one or more of these symptoms, we're being as conservative as possible. And in those instances, we're asking for people to not work in the building on that day. So once again, if you're scheduled to sub and you go through our symptom tracker for that day and you have a new symptom, a cough, a runny nose, something like that, you are not going to be able to come in and work on that day. And once again, we should be calling Audrey or Griselle, as well as, and they will email this out, our numbers for our school nurses, respectively at each building, to go through what you're experiencing. They're going to want to know what's happening, how you're feeling, have you been around other individuals that have colds or coughs or anything like that, and talk you through the process, as well as your own doctors, about what should be the best practice that you should be observing for your own health. Masks are ubiquitous now. We ask everyone to wear a mask, students and staff. The mask has to cover the nose through the mouth. It has to be worn at all times unless you're in a room by yourself, in which case you can close the door, and that would be the only instance where you can't wear a mask. We do not allow masks that have valves on them or a neck gaiter, which is you see sometimes with athletes. It's a piece of cloth that you pull up that can serve as a mask. However, it's not as effective as a full cloth mask, and so we say that you can't wear this. We're very strict on this. If we were to see faculty not wearing that or students, we're going to politely but firmly ask them to put it on or to adjust it so that it's being properly worn. And if not, we're going to be having a conversation with that student with our LSTs, with our deans, or conversely, if it's staff, with the appropriate administrator. Each building's gone through an air study looking at their air circulation and ventilation systems, and we are assured because of our air quality study that we're getting the proper ventilation in the buildings. If an area has been identified as needing upgrades, exhaust upgrades, or something of that like, we have shut down those areas and are working on it. So all of the buildings are taking in more fresh air than the standard. And they're also going to be doing some big purges of fresh air circulation midway through each day and at the end of the day, all in an effort to increase our air circulation and have the best ventilation systems possible. In the classrooms, you'll notice a couple things. First off, once the room is cleaned, our rooms are cleaned every night. Our B&G has enhanced their cleaning since this started in March. Once the room is cleaned, there is a tape seal that's put up on the door so that you know that that room has been cleaned, number one, and then number two, no one else has been in there, as long as the seal hasn't been broken. Once we start back in hybrid, right now, tentatively on November 12th, all our teachers will be back in the building. So we know that, as teachers come in the building, they'll open their room doors and they'll break those seals. But it's just an indication to you all that the room has been cleaned. And if the seal has been broken, then you know that someone's been in there. And that's when you should be following our wipe in procedure. And that would mean that every classroom, we have 2 buckets of wipes and a gallon hand pump of hand sanitizer. We'd ask students and staff when they come into a room, they should be taking a wipe and they should be wiping down their area to clean it, throw that wipe away, and then they should get, pump a hand sanitizer, clean their hands. This is something that we're asking everyone to do. They can always also wipe out the area, clean it down when they're leaving, as well as cleaning any shared equipment. But we'll get into that a little bit later on. Some other classroom safety measures, health and safety measures. Number one, all of our desks and tables are going to have the student facing in one direction. Okay, they're going to be facing the main presentation board, the whiteboard or smart board in the room. All of our students, like I said, wearing masks. You'll notice the mask theme is constant in this presentation because that's our best form of protection. Social distancing. So the furniture in the room is going to be spread out, and our students in the room are going to be spread out. We want to maintain the best social distancing possible in the environments that we have. In our hybrids, we're going to have classes at LHS of about 10 to 12 students in most cases. Vernon Hills might be slightly lower. They have a slightly lower hybrid in-person population. When we're in our classes, there is no eating of any sort because you'd have to take off your mask. Drinking is really a personal preference with our instructors. So we have told students that it's possible that they can drink in a classroom. However, if a teacher feels uncomfortable with the student even slightly lifting their mask to drink, they can ask the students to drink out in the hallway. And that'd be the same for you as a sub. Washroom use, it is okay for our students to go to the washroom. In fact, we'd rather have our kids going to the washrooms during class time than rather during passing time because there'll just be less of them in the washrooms. Biggest thing there is just to remember, don't send a group to the restroom. Okay, we really shouldn't be sending a group anywhere in our environment to maintain social distancing. So it's okay to send one male and one female at a time, and after that, they just have to wait until the next person comes back. Any equipment in the classroom, if it's shared, needs to be cleaned in between each use. We've also purchased a lot of equipment so that we're not having to share. So goggles and other things we have purchased so that the kids have their own individual equipment. But obviously, in some cases, that's not always going to happen. So in those instances, we do have to share some equipment. Our school nurse at both buildings, each building has multiple nurses. They're wonderful individuals who are helping us through this situation, and they're more than happy to talk with anyone about any symptoms, physical symptoms that they are experiencing, things that they're seeing of kids in the classroom experiencing, and just in general, sort of to talk us through what we need to do for best practice for keeping us healthy. Our sub-procedures are going to proceed very much like they have in the past. So we'd expect people to arrive to work about 30 minutes prior to the first class. At Libertyville, they'll check in with Audrey, and at Vernon Hills, Grissel. You got to wear your mask. We already know that you're going to go through a temperature check as you enter the building and a symptom check that we'd ask you to do before you ever approach campus. You can check out our new hybrid bell schedule, which has lots of differences with how long the periods are and how many periods meet each day. Needless to say, you're going to be following a different schedule when you're here doing your job. We're always going to be asking you to maintain social distance and be on the lookout to maintain social distance with the kids. As you can imagine, high schoolers and social distancing is difficult. It's a concept that is hard for them to really grasp. And so there's a lot of reminding that needs to go on, lots of just look out to try to keep them as safe as possible. When you're done with your day, you're going to check out like you always have, so with Audrey or Grissel. And when you're subbing, you could be in a classroom Okay, but we also wanted to alert you that depending upon number of subs needed and how many we can get on any given day, we may have to combine classes. If we do this, we'd be moving the class to a large area so that we can socially distance. And those areas might be like the cafeteria or the library, in which case you would be supervising in those areas. As to what the sub experience is going to look like, this is going to be a new one for us. In the past, standard practice would have lesson plans left for the sub with papers to hand out, and maybe they'd be teaching some concepts, or maybe the class would be working on different things. In our hybrid model, we're still going to have lesson plans. However, there are now a bunch of new scenarios that come into effect. So we could have teachers who are, for one reason or another, they're feeling fine, but they're maybe quarantining, so they have to be at home. In which case, they can still teach class. And in those instances, class is going to be e-school for both our remote learners as well as our in-person learners. And the sub's job is really just going to be to supervise while the teacher teaches class through the computer remotely. In other instances, the teacher is going to be ill for any number of reasons and unable to teach class. In those instances, we're going to be talking with our teachers about leaving sub lesson plans that would not require a sub to have to try to get on Zoom and do a Zoom lesson as well as teach an in-person lesson. That's a extremely difficult task. It's a difficult task for our regular teachers who are going to experience it every day, let alone a sub that's brand new and into that classroom environment for the first time. So I highly suspect that when you're subbing, that you would get a lesson plan which would simply say all students should go to Google Classroom. They should be accessing XYZ sites, videos, worksheets, and working on them, whether in person or remotely. I could see that sometimes an in-person experience is going to be different than the at-home experience. Maybe they have some papers that they're going to be working on as opposed to the at-home kids, which are doing an assignment in a different way, a potential mini lab experience. So it might not always be synchronous between what the in-person learners are doing versus the at-home learners, but nonetheless, it is going to there'll still be a lesson plan for them to follow. As you're here, if you yourself were to ever start not feeling well, or you notice that some kids maybe aren't feeling well, we would be asking in both instances to check in with our nurse. Okay. We'd want to know what the symptoms are. We want to know how you're feeling. And in the kids' instances, you may get kids that have come in the morning and you notice that they're blowing their nose. And we're not talking just like once or having a cough like once. We're talking about instances where they're coughing seemingly a lot or blowing their nose a lot or look, sometimes you can just tell that they don't look well. In those instances, it is perfectly okay to ask the student to go and check in with the nurse. And rather than saying, I am uncomfortable with, how you're coughing, you're sneezing or whatnot, I think we'd ask that student, hey, Johnny, we'd like you to go check in with the nurse. We're being very cautious with everyone's health right now. And I just want to be safe or be cautious that you are being looked after and have the nurse just do a wellness check on you. So this will be, common for our kids, and our nurses will do a wonderful job of checking them out. And if they deem that the student is ill and shouldn't be in school, that they'll work on the process to get them home. And if they also deem that that child is well and can be in school, they'll send them back to class. So we just have to trust our nurses. They're wonderful professionals, and they will help us out if a student seemingly is a little bit under the weather while they're here. Pay structure is going to remain constant. Our 2020 pay structure is going to remain the same. The things that are going to be different is since in our hybrid schedule, we only teach 4 periods a day, teaching any one class is really the equivalent of 2 normal periods. So if you were here only periods 1 and 2, half a day, you were here for half a day. So we're really working on the total time we're in the building as opposed to the number of periods that a person subs. Other things to keep in mind is We definitely, if you as a sub are feeling ill, we want you certainly checking in with your own physicians, as well as feel free to check in with our nurses. They've been wonderful in helping our staff to talk about how they're feeling, do some uh, do some diagnostics to see if they're doing well, and really take a look at the whole health of the person and see if that person should be here, should not be here, and what best course of action they should follow. So they've been great. We've talked about masks, and we've also talked about really the idea that we want everyone well and comfortable to the best point we can be in our COVID environment. And so a lot of it is really just talking and communicating with other teachers in the building, other subs, certainly with Audrey and Chriselle about what's going on, answering or asking questions, and just in general understanding what's happening. Last thing I'd say is, if anything, this pandemic experience has taught me is that change is going to happen. No matter how much we plan for it, something's going to change. It usually happens quite rapidly. So I certainly would ask for your understanding if our procedures change, or if, in general, something changes, and we're talking to you about new guidelines that we'd ask you to follow. The only reason we're changing is to better improve our processes and/or protect everyone's health and safety. So. This is going to conclude our training. As always, if you have individual questions, you should talk with each building sub-coordinator. So Griselle at Vernon Hills or Audrey at Libertyville, they'd be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you for watching and attending today, and have a great day.